Today we're going to run through the OctoPrint multi-instance install one last time. Hello everyone, Chris here. Over the years I've done lots of content around multiple OctoPrint instance installs, meaning you can run multiple 3D printers under OctoPrint from the same machine, whether that be a Raspberry Pi or some other type of PC you have an OS installed on. Now, up until this point, it has been me just putting together lists of commands that hack your way through this. But that's where my buddy Paul comes in. He's done a lot of great work on a GitHub project that makes this whole configuration really easy to do. You just have to get in command line, run a couple of things, it's going to ask you some questions, and then your install will be complete. He even has support for cameras. Some of that is a bit experimental, so we're mainly focused on the multi-instance install here today. And the best part, it doesn't matter whether you're running on a Pi image on a Raspberry Pi or any other type of Linux distribution on a PC. This script works the same for both. Now we are leaving out Windows today because that's a bit of a different animal. I do have videos on that. OctoPrint does tend to work a lot better on the Linux platform. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to run through all the steps. I'm going to show you how easy it is to get this done with Paul's script, both on a Raspberry Pi OctoPi image install and just a regular distribution of Linux. Lots of command line today, so let's get to the PC and get into it. And before we jump in command line, here's a look at the printers we're going to be using today. Down on the floor here, I have an Ender 3 that has some kind of MKS Robin board in it. We've got a Prusa Mini and a Prusa Mark III. Now you'll notice on my Raspberry Pi, I don't have any of the printers plugged in. It's going to tell you to do that during the install so that it can figure out which printer's which and get it installed correctly. So start with nothing plugged in. When this is done, we'll move to the Linux PC. We'll do it the exact same way. I'll show you another picture of that as well. And just to level set with that Pi image, OctoPi image I have running on the Raspberry Pi, it is brand new. I just created it. But it doesn't matter for you. If you have one that you'd like to use, you want to use that for multiple instances, go ahead and use it. There are backup and restore features built into the script that Paul's done that will help you out with this. Mine just happens to be brand new, so that's what we're going with. So we are going to use the putty tool to log in so we can get SSH up and run some commands. Default username is Pi and password is Raspberry. And Paul does have everything well documented out here on GitHub. All the commands that you need to use to get this done. Link in the description. He also has a video showing how to do this. I just thought it was worth our time to create another one. So here we go. Basically, the first step we need to take is to do a git clone from GitHub to pull in his script. Again, it's available on the GitHub page. We're just going to do a git clone, his URL, and we'll hit enter. That's pulled it down to our Raspberry Pi. If you take a look in there, you can see we now have an OctoPrint deploy. That's where the script lives. And we just have to run the OctoPrint deploy shell script. So do sudo OctoPrint deploy, and then OctoPrint deploy again, .sh. It's going to ask for your sudo password, Raspberry by default. And then we head into the dialog where it's going to ask us questions about our setup. He's got a lot of things baked in here, but for the first time, we just want to prepare our system. So we're going to do a 1. What kind of architecture are we using? We're running OctoPi today, so we'll do a 1. We'll use the Ubuntu install here in a moment, but for now, 1. Are we ready to begin? Yes, we are. He also gives you a choice of UStreamer or MJPEG streamer for cameras. I just keep it default for MJPEG. UStreamer could be a little bit better, so I'm just going to do no for now. Now it's doing some quick updates with the packages. And on this part, it's going to actually let you go through the wizard here command line. I showed you this is a brand new install, but you can go ahead and set it up through here so you can use this as a template for all your other instances. So let's just go ahead and do it. We'll hit Y. Our admin, let's just call it Chris. The password has been created. Do we want to continue with the first run wizard? Yep, let's go ahead. Online check connectivity. These are the same questions that we have during the GUI wizard. Yes, go ahead and enable that. Plug-in blacklist. Yes. Anonymous usage tracking, it's always helpful for the OctoPrint project, so we'll do yes. And default printer, that's just the default printer configuration, like you tell it how big the bed is so OctoPrint knows how to control it. We'll just go with defaults for now. You can always change that up. And then there's also recommended plugins if you'd like to install those. We'll go ahead and say yes, just so it shows you what the plugins are. And these are the ones that Paul recommends if you'd like to install them. Cancel objects, pretty cool. If you have multiple print objects on the bed, you can cancel just one of them. But there's all kinds of different things that they're suggesting you install. For the sake of time, I'm not going to do it now. So we'll just quit. But it's kind of cool that it's here. You can just do it on the fly. It will be part of all your templates going forward. If you want it on the first instance, you're probably going to want it on all of them. But we'll just do 9 for now. Cloud service plugins. You can go ahead and tell it yes, so we can just see what we're talking about. And he has SimplyPrint, Polar Cloud, AstroPrint. The only thing I don't see on here is Octo Everywhere, which is the one that I use. So maybe I'll ask Paul if he can include that one. But the options are here if you need them. Again, they're going to be part of every instance. So we'll just quit for now. The system preparation is done. Now we get into creating instances. So what do we need to do? Add a camera, delete a camera. There's some utilities. We just want to start creating our instance. So multiple 3D printers controlled by the same Raspberry Pi. So we'll just do one. New instance. Enter the name of the printer. This is going to be our Mark III. We'll just start with that one. Default values for now, yes. It tells you where it's going to be installed. You have to have your own specific home directory, so it's creating that. And then it wants to know if we want it to go ahead and start that auto detect printer so that it can figure out which printer is plugged in. And we'll just give it a yes. Now it's going to wait 1 minute for you to plug in your printer. So I'm going to walk over and plug in the Mark III now. We plugged in the Mark III and you saw it found the serial number. It knows which printer that is. And I don't want to associate that one with a USB camera. We're not doing cameras today. But he does have a feature here that tries to do that for you. So on this one, I'll just hit no. And we are ready to write the changes. We'll just hit yes. And that printer is ready to go. Let's go ahead and add our second one. New instance. We're just going to repeat the same process. This one will be called the Mini. We're going to use the default values. And we're ready to auto-select. We'll go plug it in. It found our serial number. No camera for us this time. We're ready to write changes. And we're good with that printer. One more time for our Ender 3. Ender 3. Default values are fine. And we're going to try to auto-detect. Now remember, this is an MKS Nano board. I'm not sure that it even has a serial number. We plugged in the printer and the serial number was not detected. But it gives you options, and that's one of the great things about this script. Even if you don't have a serial, you have multiple UDEV and IDs, it's going to take care of that for you. It is giving you a warning that if you need to pull the plug on this printer, pull it out of the USB port, you need to return it to the same port, because that's how it's going to know. So if you don't have a serial number, be aware of that, but it's still going to make this happen. So we'll just hit yes, and we don't need a USB camera, and we're ready to write. And we are done. We can go ahead and hit 8 to quit, and all 3 of our printers are installed. Now, how do you access those? Well, it's done all of this behind the scenes so that you can access the printers by how you named them. So as long as you know the name of your OctoPrint instance or the IP, you can get to these directly from the URL. So from a fresh browser, all we have to do is go to the IP or the name of the OctoPi instance. We were using the IP, and then do / the name that you called it when you set it up. We called our first one the Mark III. There it is. We used Chris and password. Our image is up. You can see it's using its own serial port. It's already talking to the printer. We can connect. We're ready to go. And then we can just duplicate this and just / mini. That's the name of the next one. Log in. Again, it's going to assume this is a template. So all of them are going to be the same. It's on the device port name, hit connect, and the mini's ready to go. And then our final one, we'll go ahead and duplicate, and we'll go to Ender 3. And there's our Ender 3 machine ready to connect up. You can see that in the terminal, it's running Marlin. Just to kind of prove that it's not a Prusa machine, we're up and running on our Ender 3. All 3 printers ready to go, running on the same Raspberry Pi. And there's all kinds of other options you can do in this script. If you need to do anything else, add more later, add cameras, just fire off that script again, pick the option you want, and you can continue on adding these as you see fit. And as you can see, adding multiple OctoPrint instances with Paul's script is way easier than anything we've ever done. It's all right there in the menu. You just have to plug them in, wait for them to be detected, and then you're good to go. And the best part, you don't have to have a serial number for your printer on your main board. It will do things like the Ender 3 or the Creality machines based on your UDEV device. You don't have to mess with any of that. This is really easy to use. And it's going to work exactly the same on any other Linux distribution. But I want to go ahead and put that to the test. So let's get set up with our mini PC next and just do this whole thing over again. So for the Linux install, it's going to be exactly the same thing, only you can see we're using our mini PC up here. It's running just a standard Ubuntu Linux image. I believe it's 22. But we're going to repeat the same steps with the same 3 printers to make sure everything's the same for a Raspberry Pi image as well as a Linux image. Now we have to do pretty much the same thing here in the Linux image. We're logged in via PuTTY with our default ID. Paul does assume that you're operating from a home directory. If you see this tilde here, you're coming from your home directory. You can do a pwd to see where you're at. But this install does expect it will be installed here. So just don't navigate to any other directories and you should be fine. Now this install does also assume that you have Git installed. Most of these distributions are going to have that. Again, this is Ubuntu. We can take a look with uname -a. This is 22.04. So a relatively new version. But we're just going to confirm it anyway. We need Git, so we'll do sudo apt install git. And you do need your password. We're good there. It's up to date. And different distributions are going to have different versions of Git, how you install them. But the most common one I see users with is Debian, Ubuntu, flavors like that. It's all going to be the same for those. Just be mindful, Paul does have notes for things like Fedora or Red Hat. So now we can just do the Git clone like we did before and bring in the project from GitHub. There's the command from Paul's GitHub page. It brings it into that OctoPrint deploy directory. And then we can run that shell script just like we did on the Pi. Sudo octoprint deploy and then octoprint deploy.sh. And we're going to start the same process. Now, a little bit more about this menu. To prepare system, that's what we're going to do. We're going to start setting up instances. But USB port testing, that's going to go ahead and give you information about the port that you plugged in. So if you wanted to plug in a printer, run this port testing, it's going to give you information about it just to make sure that your printer is able to communicate with the system. And then update, that is for the OctoPrint deploy itself. You run an update just to make sure you have the newest version of Paul's script. So just a little bit of background. But we're going to go ahead and prepare system, option 1. And we are running Ubuntu 20+. This is good for all these Debian-based, like Raspberry Pi, Raspbian OS, all that, other than OctoPrint. They're just set up a little bit differently. So we're going to go with 2. And we're ready to begin. It's going to do some installs. It only takes a moment. You will see it scroll by. Because it's a default Linux distribution, it has to install Python. So that does take a little bit, but not that big a deal depending on the speed of your server. So during the Linux version of the install, the first question we come to is use HAProxy. HAProxy does make this a little bit more convenient, and Paul's giving you the option here with the script, so I'm going to go ahead and tell it yes. That's going to get everything set up, so you can address these instances by their name. And again, which streamer would you like to use? I'm going to stick with the default and use that MJPEG streamer. So we'll go with 1. And now the OctoPrint install is pretty much complete. We're getting ready to dive into the wizard. So set up the admin user just like we saw before. We'll go ahead and do that. Our admin is Chris. Our password, we'll go with password. It shows the portion of the config file. It shows us being configured as the admin. I'm going to go ahead and let it run the wizard. So we'll go yes. I think this is just as fast as doing it through the GUI. Remember, we're building this template for multiple instances. We're going to go ahead and allow it to do online connectivity check. Plug in blacklist, yes. Anonymous user tracking, why not? And we'll just go with the default printer. Remember here, if you hit Y, it's going to give you a list of recommended plugins. You don't have to do that, but they're here so that you can build them into all your additional instances. I'm just going to quit for now. Cloud services is the same way. It's going to give you some options. I don't want to install any of those, so I'll go ahead and do quit for 4. And then we're ready to go. Now we can start building our instances. And remember, you have a lot of options here. If you want to come back and add more later, remove them, add cameras, remove cameras, all that good stuff, just rerun this shell script like I showed at the beginning. You just fire off that one command, it's going to take you directly to this menu, and you'll be good to go. You also have the option for the backup menu and the update. Update is for this deploy script. Backup menu allows you to copy or save a copy of your template so you can use it later if you want to reinstall this. There's a lot of great features here. But we're brand new, so we're going to go ahead and do new instance. And we'll do the same thing. We'll start with our MK3. We'll use the default values. And we want to go ahead and start that auto detect. And we're going to go plug in our printer USB to our mini PC. We plugged it in, it found the serial number. We're good to go on that one. I'm not going to add any cameras, so I'll just tell it no. And we're ready to write the changes. The first one is done. We'll go ahead and add another one. We're going to call this one mini, just like we did before. Default values are fine. And we're ready for the auto detect. And we'll go plug it in. It was able to detect the serial number, yet again. We don't need a USB camera, so we'll tell it no. And we want to write the changes. And now one more time, new instance. The Ender 3 is always the tricky one. A lot of these boards, Creality machines, different boards don't have a serial number. So we have to depend on the USB device. So we'll go plug it in, we'll start the auto detect. And it was able to detect it, but there's no serial number. And as long as you keep it in the same port, Paul's script is going to work. It's going by those UDEV rules. You might have seen me do this in previous videos, trying to isolate that. But if you have a hub or using a specific port, as long as you keep it in the same position, you should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and let it write it. And we don't need a camera. Save changes. And we're good to go. We hit 8 to quit. Now we can use the IP of our mini Linux machine to access those instances by their name, the printer name that we called them during this setup. So we'll open up a fresh browser. We'll go to the IP of our mini Linux computer and then do / and the name of the printer that we configured. So our first one, MK3. Log in. Here's our instance. Mark III is ready to connect. We connected. And we're getting the values that we expect. Duplicate. And our next one is our mini. Log in. Our instance for our mini is ready to go. We have the serial port assigned as mini. It even names it mini up here. Connect up. Connected. We're getting our values. Then one more time for our Ender 3. Change mini to Ender 3. And it's up and ready to connect. We'll connect up. Getting our temperatures. We're connected. Ready to use it. It can't be any simpler than this. So there you go. The absolute easiest way that I've seen anyone be able to install multiple OctoPrint instances, both on the Raspberry Pi with the Pi image and any Linux distribution. So you can run that on any PC or laptop that you wish and run multiple 3D printers on the same computer. And I know that Paul did a ton of work building this script. I've had my hand at building a lot of shell scripts over the years. This one has a lot of smarts built in that does a lot of different things in the background. So please visit Paul's GitHub page and consider supporting him, because this is a great effort and it makes things a lot easier for all the rest of us. So hopefully you found this helpful. This is, again, the easiest way that I've ever been able to do this. This will be the final video on this subject, and that will be it for today. I'll see you really soon on the next one.